Hey guys, welcome to Sportitude. My name is Josh, and today we have got a shoe review. It's a comparison review like we have done previously with a lot of our shoe comparisons gone by in the past. So in front of me I have the Brooks Ghost 15 and the Brooks Ghost 14. Now, to give you some context, this shoe is very popular globally, not just here in Australia, but the US, Europe. This shoe has a huge following, and a lot of the effort that goes into this shoe is very well known at Brooks. It is a relatively simple shoe, so it kind of contradicts what I just said there about the amount of time and effort and engineering that goes into this shoe. However, sometimes less is more, and that's certainly the case with the Brooks Ghost franchise. So in today's review, we'll dive into all the key features: the outsole, the midsole, the upper, give you some context around who should be looking and maybe buying this shoe, compare to some other shoes out there on the market, give you all the information that you need at home to, who knows, maybe make this your next shoe purchase. So without further ado, let's get stuck in. So first things first, guys, before we dive into what this shoe is all about and how it's put together, what foot type should be considering the Brooks Ghost 15? Now, nothing has changed. It's designed for that neutral, mildly overpronated runner, but also for that mildly supernated runner. So it sort of plays across three different silos. So when we're talking about that neutral runner, someone who's very consistent from landing as they come through to mid-starts, there's no favoritism towards that medial or lateral side. However, for your mildly pronated foot type, someone who comes across their mid-starts phase, doesn't like the fit and feel and function of a slightly posted or guidance shoe, and is able to tolerate a neutral engineering midsole on their foot, the Ghost 15 is going to be absolutely fine. And obviously, being a supernated where a lot of the pressure is on the outside of your foot, you too could also consider a Brooks Ghost 15. So where this shoe sits in the whole cushioning category for Brooks, it is not their most cushioned neutral shoe. The glycerin certainly takes care of that, and that's got the DNA Loft version 3 midsole, that nitrogen-infused midsole, where the new DNA Loft version 2 with the Ghost 15 is a slightly different makeup, and we'll get into that with regards to the midsole part of this review. But not being the most cushioned shoe, but being a very consistent shoe, it does talk to a lot of runners as well. So it has great cushioning underneath that entry point if you're heel striking or midfoot striking, and also with a pretty generous heel to toe offset of 12 millimeters, it does cater for a lot of people who are look or searching for that slightly high heel to toe offset to take a bit of stress and load off the Achilles calf and soleus. And also this shoe, we categorize it as more of a balanced midsole, so it has enough cushioning, but also has a slightly smoother transition through the entire gait cycle. So as you go through to mid starts and toe off, the shoe itself feels very consistent. The midsole performs very similar across the whole entire transition through heel to toe off. So therefore, we put it into that balanced category. So if you're a runner that's searching for a really cushioned shoe to cater for your easy days or your long runs, but you don't like that max cushion feel that maybe a glycerin would provide, and then let's have a chat and talk about the Ghost 15. The other great thing as well is it is being a slightly more responsive shoe through that forefoot. It can be a shoe that doubles down for runners who want to get progressively quicker over time and potentially use this for some shorter, faster runs. It is by no means just locked and loaded for long days and easy runs. It can double down as a shoe that someone might just want to entertain getting a little bit quicker. This shoe is going to be absolutely fine until you maybe make that next step and buy a lighter, more performance-based shoe for your sessions or your quicker runs out there as well. Okay guys, fun part of the review, let's talk all things engineering. So Ghost 14, Ghost 15, let's flip them upside down and show you what is going on underneath the shoe itself. So obviously the whole performance or reliability of an outsole is to protect the midsole, give this shoe as much durability as it possibly can, and provide great grip and great connection with the ground across bitumen, pavement, footpaths, whatever it be you're running on. That is exactly what this shoe is designed to do. If we talk about the overall features, I must say there is literally next to no change with regards to how the outsole is positioned, where it's positioned, and where the high abrasive rubber is placed. Through the heel through here of the Ghost 15, and the same with the Ghost 14, we have that nice abrasive rubber at the back through here, really hard compound, so it wears quite well. It's very durable for your heel strikers. As we come through to the midfoot through here, we have a little bit of rubber coverage on that medial side, a little bit of exposed DNA Loft version 2 through here, but by no means is that going to affect the performance of this midsole. It's just them reducing the weight in an area that which you don't really need any outsole configuration. Coming through to the forefoot, we have 2.5 flex grooves. That is exactly the same as last year's Ghost 14. So what I mean by that, through here, we have a whole flex groove almost at the end of your toe off, and then we have that little almost third flex groove performance on that lateral side. That's going to play really well for your supinators out there who need a little bit of extra flexibility through that forefoot as you toe off. However, for your mild overpronators, want a little bit more support under your first metatarsal, that rubber is encapsulated on that medial side. The other great thing which I like to call out, and a lot of brands are really conscious nowadays of reducing the carbon footprint, and a lot of the effort with this rubber through the forefoot is exactly that. We're talking to exactly that feature. So Brooks are making a conscious effort to try and make their shoes as carbon friendly as possible. So a lot of effort with this forefoot rubber has been in and around reducing that carbon footprint. It's a lighter, slightly softer rubber through the forefoot, which I think is great and also adds the performance benefit. But obviously there is that key message there with regards to reducing their carbon footprint. Okay, skipping the midsole, coming straight to the upper, we have an engineered air mesh configuration, where last year we had an engineered mesh. So really, sometimes I ask questions and go, why throw in the extra word? It just makes things complicated, but you need to give credit to brands, because when they go back and re-engineer a shoe, there is obviously a considerable amount of effort that goes into manufacturing this upper. And what Brooks have done, and one thing they have addressed, they wanted to make this 15 a little bit more breathable, and they have achieved that in my opinion. So I've been for a few runs in the 15s now, and I like the thickness of the tongue. I like the ventilation I got through the toe box and also the tongue area of this shoe. And I must say, it's not as noticeable as you would expect. However, with a shoe like this, you would expect it to be nice and locked down. That's my number one priority. And number two priority is I want to get plenty of ventilation through this upper as I can, and I've got exactly that. So I'll address the heel counter first. We put them back to back or side by side, however you'd like to call it. You can see the height of the heel counter is exactly the same. They haven't changed the depth of that configuration. So if you're a runner that likes to use an orthotic, you can obviously do so. I would 100% get the tick of approval from your podiatrist first before selecting this shoe. But if you come into a store like ours or wherever you go around the world to get your shoes fitted, obviously if you're an orthotic wearer, make sure you get it inside this shoe, fit, feel, make sure it feels a-okay on the foot. Now, as we come through to the midsection, as I touched on before, this shoe has a really, really thin, or I shouldn't say really thin tongue, but thinner than last year. It's by no means the thinnest tongue out there, but good ventilation through the top of your arch. And this year, we haven't got a gusseted construction, and the same thing as last year, we didn't have a gusseted construction either up top. So what I'm talking about there is the tongue isn't actually attached to the midsole on the lateral and the medial side. It doesn't need to be. It's really well formed on this shoe, and it's stitched in or welded, pardon me, to the front half of this toe box. So there's no seams through there. You're not going to feel anything as you step into this shoe. However, the tongue does stay nice and secure on top of the foot. One thing I did find, I like to play around with my orthotic inside this shoe and run with or without. I'm by no means reliant on my orthotic, but I just like to see how a shoe like this will perform. The tongue did sit up a little bit and just drop a little bit to the lateral side. It won't affect the performance of the shoe, but it's just, I suppose, one thing I'd like to call out. As you're coming through to the forefoot, the toe box, as we address that engineered air mesh, nice and light, very conformed, but breathable. It's what you would expect. And the great thing about this shoe is when you put them side by side and put them on, you step into these shoes, it's really hard to kind of identify which is a Ghost 15 and which is a Ghost 14. And in some ways, I really like that because less change is certainly more palatable for you, the runners out there. But at the same time, you kind of wonder where a shoe like this will sort of progress forward in the future. When you're only getting minor changes from one season to the next, I suppose we're getting a bit sport. We're expecting more, but in a good way. I like the fact that it's not a lot of change. The same fit, so I'm a 9.5 D width in the Ghost 14. I'm the same in the Ghost 15. So therefore, with regards to the fit and feel, nothing has changed, which is good to know as well. Okay, jumping to the midsole, and like most shoes, this is where a lot of the meat and potatoes are discussed. So with this Ghost 15, in comparison to the Ghost 14, nothing has changed with the stack height. So we've got a 24 mil on the heel, 12 millimeters in the forefoot for that offset of 12 mil. Again, as I touched on with the upper part of this review, I do like the fact they haven't altered that too much. However, the midsole does perform ever so slightly differently. Now, what I mean by that is it's a mildly lighter midsole. So what they have done in this shoe, they use EVA, they rubber and air to blow into this midsole to get the outcome that you have, which is the Ghost 15 right in front of us. Pretty similar to what they did the previous years, but not as much air. So to get a little bit more of a lighter compound underneath the foot, or lighter softer feel underneath the foot, and make the overall weight of the shoe lighter, that's how Brooks have done that. So address that with that EVA, rubber and air blown into that midsole. Now, as we touched on in the intro, there's no additional arch support on that medial side, so it's the same density on the medial as it is the lateral side. Pretty consistent last year as well, same density medial as it was on the lateral side. If we go back a couple of Ghosts now, rewind the clock a few years, we started to see Brooks play around with different densities on the lateral to the medial side, but not supportive, just ever so slightly changing that fit and feel. But what they have found is that when you get the same consistency on both sides, it just provides more of an effortless ride throughout the whole transition. And that's exactly what we get with this shoe. As I've addressed, same density both medial and lateral side. However, I find this shoe performs best when we start talking about that Z-axis, where we're actually transitioning from your entry, mid-stance and toe-off. It is a really consistent, very smooth ride. It doesn't feel like a max cushion shoe underneath your foot. It just feels honest, and that's probably the most used word when it comes to your Ghost reviews, or when we chat all things Ghost downstairs, or talking to our podiatry partners out there. It's just an honest shoe. You know what you're going to get, and that's very similar from the first kilometre right through to the time this shoe is going to go into retirement. It doesn't degrade, or the midsole doesn't drop off the face of the earth, and you know what I mean by that is your static position of your foot positioning doesn't alter too much. All you find with a Ghost 14 and 15 is once they get to the end of their life, you're just losing that little bit of cushioning that you used to get from that first kilometre, and that's a big indicator when we need to turn them over. And the other thing we'd like to just address with this overall midsole performance is that being a 12mm offset, and as I touched on a minute ago, if you have an orthotic or you haven't had an orthotic inside a Ghost before, just want to have your conversation with your podiatrist. Is my heel wedge in my orthotic going to be a-okay with this Ghost? Because if you've got a 4mm heel wedge and in a 12mm offset, obviously that bumps you up to a 16mm heel to toe gradient. So have that conversation with your podiatrist. Make sure that you're both on the same page, and then you relay that information to whatever store you go get fitted in as well. Okay, a few key statistics with this shoe. We have touched on it in this review. 12mm offset, 24 heel, 12mm in the forefoot. That's the same for both men's and women's. The weight is almost identical. Men's is a 285 gram shoe for a men's size 9. The ladies for a size 7 is around that sort of 255 grams. It's a couple of grams lighter than what it was last year. So again, you don't buy this shoe because it's a lighter performing shoe. However, Brooks made those minor addresses in regards to the upper and the midsole performance, and that's where we see that slight weight reduction. Now, other shoes out there that come in comparison to your Brooks Ghost 15, so you're talking Gel Cumulus from Asics, Mizuno Wave Rider from the Mizuno family, and I'd probably throw in two others, being the Saucony Ride, which is an 8mm offset but a pretty consistent smooth transition, and also the 880. But I must say the 880 is probably a little bit more cushioned underneath the body. So that's 4 shoes to throw into that same conversation as your Brooks Ghost 15. And the other thing to address, and I love calling this out, when brands commit, invest, and make widths in their shoes, that really does mean they care, and I don't care if a brand comes back at me and says that's not fair. Well, I'm going to call you out, because if you make a shoe, you spend the time and the effort, years of engineering into a shoe, and you don't make it available for the running community, all you're doing is making things difficult. So in the men's, we have a B narrow, D standard, 2E, and a 4E. So you've got 4 widths on offer in the men's, which is absolutely fantastic. In the ladies, we have 3 widths, 2A, which is narrow, B, which is standard, and then a D offering as well. So I say it, and I'll say it time again, when brands make shoes in widths, that means they care. Okay, guys, there you have it. That is my take on the Brooks Ghost 15. It is a very consistent shoe. If you've liked the 14s, I have got no doubt in my mind you'll be able to transition into the 15s with absolute ease. Same width, same size, no questions asked. I really like what Brooks have done and are continually doing with this shoe. I might have touched on it in this intro where there's not a lot of change, and sometimes you start to question, well, what are they actually doing? But then again, when you've got something that's working as well as this shoe globally, you should not need to change too much. And the outsole, midsole, and the upper is very consistent, just those subtle adjustments with this shoe. Again, it's a balanced cushion shoe, so it's not the most cushioned shoe out there, but it gives you a good, honest performance in terms of cushioning, midfoot transition, and that nice smooth transition through your toe off as well. So there you have it, guys. That is my take. Ghost 15. If you've had Ghost previously, let us know in the comments section below. If you've got any other sort of comments, queries, or theories around what you've been using and would this shoe be applicable, again, let us know in the comments section below. If you haven't subscribed to our channel, hit that red button, stay notified, and we'll keep knocking out these shoe reviews for you, the running community, all over the world, Northern Hemisphere, Southern Hemisphere. We don't care where you are as long as you're out and about running. Thank you very much for watching. Take care of one another, and we'll see you out on the road.